historia de la primera Navidad a través de unos ojos completamente nuevos.
It's the wise men.
Hide quickly.
The other way.
The other left.
Tim, thank you so much for giving us the time.
My pleasure.
First question, do you think the star communicates values effectively based on some research I did of your speech on this on the internet?
Yeah, I think that films are not good at preaching because they're fiction films. So if you don't want to enter that world, then you can just say, well, it's made up. So there's no way to really convince somebody of something with a film, in my opinion. What films can do rather than persuade is present. We can just present a story, present something that's emotionally true. We can speak to the heart rather than to the head in a way. And so what I'm hoping to do with The Star is to present the meaning of the story of Christmas in a way that hits you on a gut level, where you see the truth of the idea that great things can come in humble appearances. That's really the theme of baby Jesus coming, the King of Kings coming in the form of a little baby. And I think that that's relevant for all of us in our personal lives because most of us aren't doing something that's going to make us rich or famous, but that doesn't mean that God isn't calling us to do something great.
You talk about the perception of what is versus what actually is. Mm-hmm. And the film industry does a lot of influencing our day-to-day culture. How can we do this in media? How can our audience do this in day-to-day life? And how does The Star add to that?
Well, I think it's about identifying messages that it seems like the culture has forgotten. I think a really big one is that love requires sacrifice. I think too often people think that love is just a feeling, and as long as it's there, then it's great, and once it goes away, it's over. But love is a daily choice, and any parent can tell you that, that it's not always easy, and sometimes you want to rip their head off, right? I'm not a parent, but my parents definitely felt that way about me. And so by presenting the truth of something like that in an emotional way, I think that's how we can get some of these messages out there in the culture that the culture needs to hear.
Okay, you talk about presenting stories. You said that before, and this is a wonderful story. Why did you pick this particular one? I also read that you were waiting to tell this story, but this was the choice that you made. It's animated, animals, and it's funny. Mm-hmm. Why this one?
Well, we've all heard the Christmas story, the story of the Nativity, so many times, hundreds of times, and most of the times it involved little kids with fake mustaches drawn on them, right? Like it's not always the most elaborate professional presentation when we hear this story. So if we're going to tell the Nativity story, we have to find a way to make it fresh and make you forget all the hundreds of times you've seen it before. And telling it from the point of view of the animals was a real opportunity to do that because we've never heard the story of those animals. And it's an opportunity for me as a creative person as well because the Bible doesn't tell us that either. So there's room to have some fun, to have some comedy and adventure while always letting Mary and Joseph be who they are in the Bible, and we don't have to turn them into action heroes. We can do that with the animals.
Right. And finally, anything in your background that helped you bring this to life?
Yeah, I think in my family, with my upbringing, we had a real focus on some of the things I've been talking about. Ordinary life is where you can get closer to God. You don't have to do something extraordinary. And I think Mary and Joseph are two really great examples of that because they are saints, but they never went on a mission. They weren't priests, they weren't monks, they weren't nuns. They were just good parents. And I think that's such a great example to put there out in the world that these two great saints lived ordinary lives. And that's a real inspiration for all of us ordinary people.
The new king's in danger.
Run for your life! Get out of the way!
Here's a little well-placed distraction.
The Star.